The Misunderstanding. Chapter 1. The Man in the Hat. I've lived 73 years on this earth, survived 2 husbands. 1 to divorce, 1 to natural causes. Raised 3 children, and mastered the art of Tuesday bingo at the community center. What I have not survived, apparently, is my past catching up with me. The first time I noticed him, I was at Tesco buying digestive biscuits and cat food. Nothing unusual about that. I do it every Thursday like clockwork. But there he was, lurking near the frozen peas, wearing a black trilby hat and sunglasses indoors. Indoors. In Britain, where we get approximately 11 minutes of sunshine per year. I thought perhaps he was just eccentric. Lord knows we've got enough of those wandering about. But then I saw him again on Friday at the post office. Same hat. Same sunglasses. Different suspicious vegetable aisle to hide behind. This time it was magazines, but the principle was the same. By Saturday, when he appeared outside my flat building, pretending to read a newspaper upside down, I knew something was terribly wrong. You see, I've been harboring a secret for 54 years. A grave sin from my youth that I thought I'd buried forever. But somehow, they'd found me. And they were coming to silence me before the truth could come out. My hands trembled as I made my way up to my second-floor flat. Mr. Whiskers. My cat, not a euphemism for anything sinister, greeted me with his usual indifferent meow. I locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and wedged a chair under the handle for good measure. "It's happening, Mr. Whiskers," I whispered, sinking into my armchair. "After all these years, they've found me." Mr. Whiskers licked his bottom. He's not much for emotional support. I knew what I had to do. There was only one person I could trust with this. One person with the skills and resources to protect me. My grandson, Daniel. Chapter 2. The Confession. Daniel arrived within the hour, still in his tactical gear from work. He's a Special Forces police officer. The kind that rappels out of helicopters and says things like, breach, and hostile. Very impressive, though he still can't work my television remote. "Gran, what's the emergency?" He scanned my flat, like he expected armed gunmen to pop out of my linen closet. "You said it was life or death." "Sit down, love." I patted the sofa beside me. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." His expression shifted to concern. "Are you ill?" No. Worse." I took a deep breath. "I'm being hunted." "Hunted? Gran, please, just listen." I gripped his hand. "In 1971, I did something terrible. Something that's haunted me every day since. And now someone knows. They're tracking me, Daniel. They're going to kill me to keep me quiet." Daniel's tactical training kicked in. His jaw tightened, his eyes sharpened. "Who's tracking you? What did you see?" "Not saw. Did." I could barely meet his eyes. It was July 14, 1971. I was 19, working at the Odeon Cinema. It was my shift, my responsibility, and My voice cracked. I gave someone the wrong change. Silence. "You. What?" "I gave someone the wrong change." I burst out. A man bought a ticket to Diamonds Are Forever. 2 shillings and 6 pence. He gave me a £5 note. I should have given him £3, 18 shillings, and 6 pence back. But I was distracted, because there was a commotion at the concession stand. Someone had spilled an entire tray of drinks. And I gave him £4, 18 shillings, and 6 pence instead. More silence. I stole from the Odeon, Daniel. A whole pound. I never reported it. I just let it happen. And the till was short at the end of the night, and my manager Mr. Henderson got in trouble, and I said nothing. Nothing. Daniel stared at me. Then he rubbed his face with both hands. Gran. You called me away from a hostage negotiation training. Because you gave someone an extra quid in change 50 years ago? Don't you see? That's why they're after me. The man in the hat has been following me for 3 days. They know what I did. The man in the hat. Yes. Black trilby, sunglasses, very suspicious vegetables. Suspicious. Vegetables. He was skulking, Daniel. Lurking. Near the frozen peas and then the magazines. My grandson took a very deep breath. The kind you take before explaining something to a particularly slow child. Gran, I think maybe you're just noticing someone who. The window exploded inward. Chapter 3. The Great Escape. Glass showered across my carpet as a metal canister bounced into the room. Hissing gray smoke. Daniel moved faster than I'd ever seen anyone move, grabbing me and diving behind the sofa just as my front door crashed open. 2 figures in black masks burst in through the smoke. Target acquired. One shouted. Get down. Police. Daniel roared, pulling his service weapon. Instead of complying, the masked figures turned and ran back out my broken doorway. Daniel was up in a flash, pursuing them down the corridor. I heard thundering footsteps, shouts, and what sounded like someone crashing through Mrs. Pemberton's decorative plant stand. I stood on shaky legs. Mr. Whiskers yowling from under the china cabinet. My ears were ringing. My windows were destroyed. And I'd been right all along. They really were trying to kill me. Daniel returned 5 minutes later, breathing hard, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, 2 suspects, approximately 6 foot, athletic build, military-grade smoke grenades. No, I lost them in the parking garage. He hung up and turned to me. And for the first time in his life, I saw my grandson look genuinely shaken. Gran, he said carefully. What exactly happened in 1971? Chapter 4. Into the Safe House. Daniel insisted I couldn't stay at my flat. Within 20 minutes, he'd packed me a bag. Including Mr. Whiskers, who was not pleased about his carrier. Swept me into his car. And driven me to what he called, a secure location. It turned out to be his mate Trevor's flat in Croydon. Trevor was away in Spain, apparently, and had very questionable taste in wall art. Right. Daniel said, after checking all the windows and setting the deadbolts. We're going to figure this out. Tell me everything again. Every detail about 1971. I settled onto Trevor's lumpy sofa. Mr. Whiskers regarding us both with supreme disdain from his carrier. It was my summer job. I began. I was 19, just finished my A-levels, working at the Odeon Leicester Square. Very posh cinema, that. I wore a little uniform and everything. And you gave someone wrong change. £1 extra. To a man in a grey suit. He had dark hair, very neat, and he was quite handsome actually. Had an accent. Foreign, I think. He smiled at me, said, "Thank you, miss," and left. I didn't even realize my mistake until closing. Daniel was writing this down in a little notebook. Very professional. Did anything else unusual happen that day? I thought hard. Well, Janet. My colleague. She called in sick at the last minute. Said she had a stomach bug. But when I rang her up a few days after, she admitted she'd gone to Brighton with a mechanic instead. Left me to handle the ticket booth alone during the evening rush. Saucy thing. Anything else? Anyone else acting strange? Mr. Henderson was in a right state that night. The till was short, of course, but he was also having hushed telephone conversations in his office. Kept locking the door. I assumed it was about the missing money, but I frowned, memories stirring after decades. Actually, now that I think of it, he was nervous all week. Jumpy. He fired Janet the next day, said she'd been stealing, but I always wondered. Daniel looked up sharply. He fired her? Your colleague who called in sick? Yes. Without notice. Janet was furious, said she'd never stolen anything. But Mr. Henderson insisted the till discrepancies had been going on for weeks. I shook my head. I always felt terrible. I thought maybe my mistake had been the final straw that got her fired. Or, Daniel said slowly, maybe something else was going on entirely. His phone buzzed. He answered it, his expression growing more serious with each passing second. Right. Yes. How many? Christ. Okay, pull everything you can. No, keep this quiet. I'll explain later. He hung up and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Gran, those men who attacked your flat? They're professionals. Ex-military, possibly. And he hesitated. They left behind some equipment. A tracking device. It's sophisticated. Expensive. This isn't about wrong change from 1971. But then why? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. He grabbed his jacket. Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone. I'll be back in a few hours. Where are you going? To the archives, he said. I need to check something about that cinema. Chapter 5. The plot thickens. Daniel returned just after midnight, carrying a box of old newspapers and files that he'd apparently charmed out of some archive clerk. I'd made tea and was watching Trevor's truly awful collection of reality television. Right, he announced, spreading papers across Trevor's coffee table. This is mad. Language, Daniel. Sorry, Gran. But look at this. He pushed a yellowed newspaper toward me, dated July 20th, 1971. The headline read, Daring Leicester Square Heist. £2 million in diamonds stolen. I adjusted my reading glasses. What does this have to do with the date? July 14th. The night you gave wrong change. Was the same night a diamond shipment was being transferred through a secure facility 3 buildings away from the Odeon. On July 19th, that shipment disappeared. The thieves were never caught. But I was just working at a cinema. Yes, but look at this. He pulled out another paper. The police suspected the criminals used the cinema as a meeting point. Several witnesses reported seeing suspicious individuals near the Odeon in the days before the heist. And your manager, Mr. Henderson. He pulled out an old employee roster. He quit exactly 1 week after the robbery. Left London entirely. No forwarding address. My teacup clattered against the saucer. You think Mr. Henderson was involved? I think it's possible. And I think these people tracking you believe you know something about it. But I don't. I just gave wrong change. I know that. You know that. But apparently, they don't know that. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. Think, Gran. Did you see anything else that night? Anyone unusual? Any conversations? I closed my eyes, trying to pull details from 54 years ago. There was. Wait. Yes. When I was cashing up that night, Mr. Henderson came out of his office with someone. A man. They were arguing in whispers. I only caught a bit of it. Something about the transfer and keeping quiet. The man said, "She's a liability." And Mr. Henderson said, "She's just a girl, she doesn't know anything." The room went very quiet. Gran, Daniel said carefully, I think they were talking about you. Chapter 6. The Team. By morning, Daniel had assembled what he called the team. This consisted of his partner from the tactical unit, a woman named Sergeant Sarah Chen, who looked like she could bench press a car, and a very nervous analyst named Patel, who kept adjusting his glasses and saying, "This is highly irregular." Right, Sarah said, spreading more papers across Trevor's table. I've been digging into the 1971 heist. It was huge news at the time. Biggest diamond theft in UK history. The diamonds were never recovered, the thieves never caught. The case went cold by 1975. The lead investigator, Patel added, scrolling through his tablet, was Detective Inspector Morris Blackwood. He became obsessed with the case. Convinced there was a conspiracy. He was forced into early retirement in 1976 after making allegations against several prominent businessmen without evidence. Let me guess, I said. He looked a bit mad. Completely mental, according to his files, Patel confirmed. Brilliant. So I'm being hunted by professional assassins over a crime I had nothing to do with. Investigated by a madman. All because I can't do basic maths. Actually, Daniel said, pulling up something on his laptop. It gets weirder. Look at this. He turned the screen toward us. It showed a news article from 2 weeks ago. Detective's daughter reopens father's cold case. Sarah leaned in. Blackwood's daughter? She's a private investigator now. According to this article, she found her father's old files in his attic after he died last year. She's convinced she can solve the case he couldn't. And Daniel clicked to another page. She's been putting out inquiries about anyone who worked at the Odeon in July 1971. Oh no. I whispered. Oh yes. I think your name came up. And I think some very dangerous people who were involved in that heist back in '71. People who've been living quietly for decades. Suddenly got very nervous about what you might know. But I don't know anything. They don't know that. And there's more. He pulled up another file. Remember the man you gave the wrong change to? You said he had dark hair, foreign accent, gray suit? Yes. 3 days after the heist, a man matching that description was found dead in the Thames. He was identified as Peter Crane, but the circumstances of his death were never solved. Ruled as suspicious, but no arrests were ever made. The coroner's report noted he had exactly £5, 18 shillings, and 6p in his pocket. The room spun slightly. The extra pound, I whispered. The extra pound, Daniel confirmed. Gran, I think you accidentally gave change to one of the thieves. And I think that got him killed. Chapter 7. The Surveillance. Right. Sarah announced, strapping on what appeared to be enough tactical gear to invade a small country. If these people think Mrs. Patterson knows something, they'll keep coming. We need to draw them out. Absolutely not, Daniel said. My grandmother is not bait. Your grandmother, I interjected, is sitting right here and can make her own decisions. What's your plan, dear? Sarah grinned. I like her. Okay, here's the thinking. We stage a meeting. Make it look like Mrs. Patterson is meeting with Blackwood's daughter to share information. We leak the location through channels we know the bad guys are monitoring. They show up, we grab them, and we flip them to find out who they're working for. That's mental, Patel said. That's brilliant, I said. Gran. Oh, don't fuss, Daniel. I haven't had this much excitement since your grandfather tried to put up that satellite dish and fell through the conservatory roof. Besides, they've already blown up my flat. I'm invested now. It took another hour of arguing, but Daniel finally agreed. Mainly because Sarah pointed out that the alternative was me getting assassinated in Tesco during my Thursday shopping, which would be far less controlled. The plan was set for the next evening. We'd chosen a cafe in Soho. Public enough to seem safe, private enough for a meeting. Patel would monitor from a van outside. Sarah and 2 other tactical officers would be positioned inside as customers. Daniel would be with me, posing as my concerned grandson. Not much of a stretch. We'd sent the message through a channel that Blackwood's daughter was using, making it look like I'd agreed to meet her and share what I remembered about 1971. Now we just had to wait. How do you feel? Daniel asked me that evening, as I dressed in my good cardigan for the occasion. Terrified, I admitted. But also, Daniel, I've spent 54 years feeling guilty about that pound. About Mr. Henderson getting in trouble. About possibly contributing to Janet losing her job. If this helps solve what really happened, if it brings some justice, well, that would be nice. He hugged me. You're very brave, Gran. Or very stupid. The line is thin. Chapter 8. The Café. The Café was one of those trendy places that serves 12-pound flat whites and has exposed brick walls. Very modern. Very uncomfortable chairs. Daniel sat across from me, pretending to scroll through his phone while actually monitoring the tactical communication. Sarah was at a corner table with a newspaper. Two other officers I didn't recognize were near the door. I sipped my enormously overpriced tea and tried not to look as terrified as I felt. Contact. Patel's voice crackled through Daniel's hidden earpiece. I could just barely hear it. Black sedan, 2 occupants, just parked across the street. No visible weapons but moving like operators. Copy. Daniel murmured. The cafe door opened. A woman in her 50s entered, looking around nervously. She had her father's stern expression, but her eyes were kinder. Mrs. Patterson? She asked, approaching our table. Miss Blackwood, I presume? Please, call me Helen. She sat down, setting a worn leather briefcase on the table. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I know this must be difficult, after all these years. Well, I said, sticking to the script we'd prepared. I've been carrying this secret for too long. It's time I told someone what I saw that night. Helen leaned forward eagerly. You saw something? At the cinema? Movement. Daniel's voice, tight with warning. 2 men, entering from the rear of the cafe. Armed. Everything happened very fast. Sarah and the other officers moved simultaneously, drawing weapons and shouting commands. The 2 men at the rear door pulled guns. Customers screamed. Helen Blackwood dove under the table. I, very sensibly, threw myself on the floor and covered my head. Police. Drop your weapons. Gunfire. Not the movie kind. The real kind, deafening and sharp. I heard glass breaking, more shouting, and then Daniel's body covering mine, shielding me. And then, suddenly, silence. Clear. Sarah's voice. Suspects in custody. Daniel helped me up slowly. My ears were ringing and my knees were scraped, but I was alive. The 2 gunmen were face down on the floor, Sarah and another officer kneeling on them with handcuffs. Helen Blackwood emerged from under the table, white as a sheet. What? What just? Miss Blackwood, Daniel said, helping her up as well. I'm Sergeant Daniel Patterson, Tactical Unit. I think you and my grandmother have been caught in the middle of something much bigger than either of you realize. Chapter 9. The truth comes out. The interrogation room at New Scotland Yard was exactly like you'd see on television, which was oddly disappointing. I'd expected something more dramatic. One of the gunmen, identified as Marcus Webb, ex-military, currently employed by a private security firm, sat across from us. He'd agreed to talk in exchange for a reduced sentence. His solicitor had negotiated. I didn't sign up to hurt old ladies, he said sullenly. This was supposed to be simple intimidation. Intimidation for whom? Daniel asked. Webb glanced at his solicitor, who nodded. We were hired by a company called Sentinel Solutions. They do reputation management for high-profile clients. 3 weeks ago, we got a contract to monitor and discourage anyone looking into the 1971 Leicester Square heist. Who hired Sentinel Solutions? That's above my pay grade. But the word was that one of the original thieves, Someone who got away with it and went on to become very successful, very respectable. Was worried about Blackwood's daughter stirring things up. They wanted anyone connected to the case scared off. Sarah, standing against the wall, spoke up. But Mrs. Patterson here wasn't looking into anything. She was just living her life. Yeah, we realized that about day 2, Webb said. But by then, we'd already started surveillance. And then. He shook his head. This is where it gets stupid. My partner, the one in the hat? He's new. Doesn't know London well. He was supposed to be watching a Margaret Patterson on Croydon Road. Instead, he tracked Margaret Patterson on Cromwell Road. Different person entirely. Silence filled the room. You mean? I said slowly. You were following the wrong Margaret Patterson? Yeah. For 3 bloody days. We didn't realize until after we'd already hit your flat. By then, the client was furious, demanding we fix our mistake, and everything spiraled. We figured we'd scared you enough that you'd stay quiet anyway, but then you called in the police and... He shrugged. Here we are. And the other Margaret Patterson? Daniel asked. The one on Croydon Road you were supposed to be watching? Webb shifted uncomfortably. We looked into her after we realized our mistake. She's 70 now, lives alone. Born Margaret Crane in 1955. Changed her name to Patterson when she married in the 70s. Her father disappeared when she was a teenager. She'd been asking questions, trying to track down what happened to him. The room went very quiet. Peter Crane's daughter, I whispered. Yeah. Webb confirmed. The client panicked when she started digging into her father's disappearance. Especially when she connected with that Blackwood woman. 2 people looking into the same cold case from different angles? That made someone very nervous. I looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Patel, who joined us and was frantically typing on his tablet. So let me get this straight, I said. I thought I was being hunted for giving wrong change in 1971. You thought you were hunting someone who knew something about a diamond heist. But actually, you were hunting the wrong person entirely, because you can't read an address properly. And the person you should have been hunting, Margaret Crane, has no idea any of this happened? Not sure about the diamond thing, but pretty much, Webb confirmed. That, I said, is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Welcome to modern private security, Webb said. We're all idiots with expensive gear. Chapter 10. The Mastermind. It took Patel less than 2 hours to trace Sentinel Solutions back through 3 shell companies to its actual owner, Sir Geoffrey Pemberton. Currently chairman of Pemberton Holdings, one of the UK's largest investment firms. Oh my God, I said, staring at his photo on Patel's screen. That's Mrs. Pemberton's brother. From my building. The woman with the decorative plant stand I destroyed? Daniel asked. Yes. Geoffrey visits her every Sunday. Brings her flowers. Very proper gentleman, in his 70s now. Always very polite. Sarah was already making calls. We need a warrant. Now. If Sir Geoffrey is one of the original thieves, there might still be evidence. After 50 years, people get comfortable, careless. But there's a problem, Patel said, scrolling through more files. Sir Geoffrey has connections everywhere. Police, politicians, judges. If we move officially, word will get out and he'll disappear. Then we don't move officially, Daniel said. Not yet. What are you thinking? Sarah asked. Daniel smiled. It wasn't a particularly nice smile. I'm thinking my gran needs to attend Sunday tea with Mrs. Pemberton. Chapter 11. Sunday tea. Mrs. Pemberton was delighted when I knocked on her door that Sunday with a tin of homemade biscuits. Well, Marks and Spencer biscuits in a homemade-looking tin. But she didn't need to know that. Margaret. How lovely. I heard about your windows. Absolutely dreadful. Do come in, Geoffrey's just arrived. Sir Geoffrey Pemberton stood as I entered the sitting room. He was tall, well-dressed, with silver hair and that particular confidence that comes from 50 years of getting away with things. Mrs. Patterson, he said, shaking my hand. Terrible business about your flat. I hope the police catch whoever did it. Oh, I'm sure they will, I said pleasantly. They're very thorough these days. Not like in the old times. Something flickered in his eyes. The old times? Oh yes. Back when I was young, working at the Odeon Leicester Square, 1971. Do you remember 1971, Sir Geoffrey? The room went very still. Mrs. Pemberton, bless her, was obliviously pouring tea. Can't say I do particularly, Sir Geoffrey said. But his hand had tightened on his teacup. Really? I remember it quite well. Especially July. I worked at the cinema, you see. Very exciting times. There was a big diamond heist that month. All over the news. Margaret dear, milk? Mrs. Pemberton asked. Yes please, love. 2 sugars. I turned back to Geoffrey. Funny thing, I was just talking to a detective about it. They've reopened the case, you see. Found some new evidence. Very interesting. Sir Geoffrey's urbane mask was cracking. Have they? Oh yes. Apparently one of the thieves was never caught. Went on to have a very successful life. Made quite a fortune. Of course, that's suspicious in itself, isn't it? Sudden wealth with no clear source? I built my company from the ground up, Geoffrey said coldly. Yes, but from where? That's what they're asking. And they're very interested in talking to people who worked at the Odeon that month. I gave them quite a detailed statement. It was a complete lie, but he didn't know that. Geoffrey set down his teacup with a click. Sister dear, I'm afraid I need to leave early. Business call. But you just got here. Urgent matter. Margaret, a pleasure. He was already moving toward the door. Likewise, I called after him. I'm sure we'll see each other again. Perhaps at the police station. The door slammed. Mrs. Pemberton blinked. Well, that was odd. Terribly odd, I agreed, pulling out my mobile phone. Mrs. Pemberton, dear. Do you happen to know if your brother keeps anything in storage? Old family items perhaps? Oh yes, he has a unit at that facility in Docklands. Why do you ask? I was already texting Daniel. He took the bait. Check Docklands storage. Chapter 12. The Diamonds. The tactical team hit the storage facility an hour later. Sir Geoffrey had gone straight there, as predicted, probably planning to move whatever evidence he'd kept all these years. They found him trying to load a 1970s-era safe into his car. Inside the safe, £2 million worth of diamonds. 1971 value worth considerably more now. Detailed plans of the heist, and photographs of a younger Geoffrey Pemberton meeting with my old manager, Mr. Henderson, and 3 other men. One of those men was the one I'd given wrong change to. The one who'd ended up dead in the Thames. He kept it all, Daniel explained to me later, as we sat in his flat. My flat was still being repaired. Couldn't resist. The diamonds were his retirement plan, but the documents? I think he kept those as insurance against the others. Mutually assured destruction. If anyone talked, he'd bring them all down. What happened to Mr. Henderson? I asked. And the others? Henderson died in 1994. Natural causes. The other 2 men in the photos. We're tracking them now. One's in Spain, one's in Monaco. Both living very well. Interpol's been notified. And the man I gave change to? Peter Crane? How did he end up in the Thames? Daniel's expression darkened. Best we can tell, he was the inside man at the security company. After the heist, Henderson and Pemberton decided he was a liability. He'd been drinking, talking too much. They killed him and dumped him in the river. The extra £1 you gave him was pure coincidence. But it helped us connect him to the cinema. And therefore to the heist. When we re-examined the old coroner's report. His daughter, Margaret Crane, I said quietly. The real target. Yes. We contacted her this morning. Margaret Patterson now lives on Croydon Road. She'd been searching for answers about why he was killed and what he was involved in. When she connected with Helen Blackwood and their investigations started overlapping, it spooked Pemberton. He hired the security firm to intimidate her into stopping, like Webb said. But they came after me instead. Wrong address, wrong Margaret Patterson. She's safe, Gran. And now she finally knows what happened to her father. We're arranging for you 2 to meet, actually. Thought you might want to talk. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about that young woman. Well, as young as me, which means something. Who'd spent decades wondering what happened to her father. At least she'd finally have answers, even if they were painful ones. Then I think about myself and my sin. So I've been carrying guilt for 50 years over wrong change that had nothing to do with anything. Not nothing, Gran. That wrong change helped solve a murder. Eventually. He squeezed my hand. You're a hero. I'm a pensioner who can't do maths. A heroic pensioner who can't do maths. And what about Helen Blackwood? Her father? We called her. She's writing an article about the whole case. How her father was right all along. It won't bring him back, but at least his name will be cleared. Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to jump into my lap, purring. Trader had been enjoying Daniel's flat immensely. Better food, apparently. There's one thing I don't understand, I said. Why did they come to know of Margaret Patterson? Margaret Crane? Why now? Pemberton saw the name come up in Helen's inquiries. He knew she was Crane's daughter and got panicked. Sent his people to scare her off. But they found the wrong Margaret Patterson. There were apparently 17 in London. By the time they realized their mistake, you'd already called me, and the whole thing unraveled from there. Then come the entire thing. The chase, the attack, the sting operation. All because some private security firm can't use Google properly. Essentially, yes. I started to laugh. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. 50 years of guilt, 3 days of terror, professional assassins defeated by a wrong address, and my inability to do basic arithmetic. Daniel started laughing too. Then we were both laughing, the kind of helpless laughter that comes after stress and fear and relief all mixed together. Gran, Daniel finally said, wiping his eyes. Promise me something? What's that, love? Next time you commit a grave sin, just tell me immediately? Save us both some trouble? I'll do my best. Though I am planning to steal some sugar packets from Costa next week. Should I report that? Only if they send assassins. Fair enough. Epilogue. 6 months later. My flat was repaired. New windows, fresh paint, and the council even threw in a new front door. I was back to my Thursday shopping at Tesco, though I must admit I still got a little nervous around the frozen peas. Sir Geoffrey Pemberton was awaiting trial on charges of theft, murder, conspiracy, and witness intimidation. His fancy lawyers were fighting it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The diamonds had been returned to the insurance company, who were thrilled. 50-year-old cold cases don't usually come with actual recovered property. Peter Crane's daughter. The other Margaret Patterson, the one they were supposed to target. Finally got closure about her father. We'd met for tea the month before. 2 Margaret Pattersons who'd been accidentally connected by a bumbling security firm and a 50-year-old crime. She was a lovely woman. A retired teacher. We still meet monthly now. It's nice having someone who understands the absurdity of the whole thing. Helen Blackwood wrote her article, and her father's reputation was restored posthumously. The 2 other thieves were extradited from Spain and Monaco respectively. And me? I got a commendation from the Metropolitan Police for services to justice. Which was frankly ridiculous but made for a lovely photo for my mantelpiece. Daniel still comes for Sunday lunch every week. He's also started checking my bank statements to make sure I'm not accidentally embezzling from anywhere. Mrs. Pemberton, bless her, was mortified about her brother but rallied magnificently. She now hosts a weekly, true crime tea, where we watch detective shows and discuss them over biscuits. She's quite bloodthirsty for a woman who does needlepoint. As for me, I've learned several important lessons. 1. Always double count your change. 2. If you're going to harbor guilt for 50 years, make sure it's for something you actually did. 3. Private security firms are apparently less competent than you'd expect. And 4. When your grandson says, "Gran, that's not how crime works," listen to him. He's usually right. Though in this case, crime worked out rather well for everyone. Except Sir Geoffrey. And the murdered man. All right, perhaps it didn't work out well for anyone involved originally. But it worked out well for me, and at 73, that's really all one can ask for. I'm off to Costa now. Those sugar packets won't steal themselves. Just kidding, Daniel. I'm paying for them. Mostly.